There was a time when the creative director was the most powerful person in fashion. They were the visionaries, the dictators of taste, the artists who built entire worlds from scratch. But if you look at the fashion industry today, that person no longer exists. The creative director as we knew it is dead. They haven't disappeared, they've just been replaced. Replaced by brand image managers, by celebrities, and by algorithms. Between 2024 and 2025, the fashion industry experienced an unprecedented game of musical chairs. More than 20 major European houses, from Chanel and Givenchy to Gucci and Maison Margiela, changed their creative leadership. In the spring 2026 season alone, there were 15 designer debuts. But this wasn't a creative renaissance. It was a corporate panic. The boardrooms at conglomerates like LVMH and Kering no longer want geniuses who take risks. They want algorithm followers who can translate spreadsheets into clothing. They want viral moments, not artistic statements. So how did we get here? How did the fashion industry sell its soul for quarterly earnings? And what happens to the clothes when the marketing department is the one actually designing them? To understand what we lost, you have to understand how the system used to work. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the power dynamic was clear. The marketing department worked for the designer. When John Galliano was at Dior or Alexander McQueen was at Givenchy, their job was to dream. They built massive, theatrical, sometimes controversial worlds. They dictated the silhouette, the mood, and the cultural conversation. They were allowed to fail as long as they failed spectacularly. The runway was a stage for their imagination, and the clothes were the props. Galliano's controversial Clochards collection for Dior, inspired by Parisian homeless culture, was almost impossible to justify by conventional commercial standards. McQueen's Horn of Plenty in 2009 was built around shredded references, trash, old show debris, and fashion's own obsession with recycling itself. Neither collection made simple commercial sense. Both are now remembered as masterpieces. That was the point. The designer had the power to be wrong in ways that mattered. Compare that to the Gucci belt. The same belt, re-released, repriced, re-logoed season after season. Not because it is new, because the data says it sells. The marketing department's job was to figure out how to sell that dream to the public. The designer was the sun, and the corporation orbited around them. The executives managed the business, but the creative vision still came from the designer. But over the last decade, that dynamic has shifted. Today, the designer often works inside a much tighter corporate framework. The shift happened slowly, driven by social media, global expansion, and the consolidation of luxury into massive, publicly traded conglomerates. When a brand is owned by LVMH or Kering, it is no longer just a fashion house. It is an asset in a portfolio. And assets are expected to deliver consistent, predictable, quarter-over-quarter growth. You cannot build predictable growth on the unpredictable whims of an artist. Artists have bad seasons. Artists get bored. Artists want to challenge the consumer, not just comfort them. So the role of the creative director was quietly redefined. They were no longer only expected to invent the future of fashion. They were expected to manage the brand's image, create cultural moments, and make sure the core products, the sneakers, the belts, the logo bags, kept selling. The artist was not removed from fashion completely. But more and more, the artist was turned into a curator. The most obvious symptom of this power shift is the rise of the celebrity creative director. If the goal is not only to create groundbreaking design, but also to generate maximum visibility, conversation, and sales, then fashion starts looking for people who already come with an audience. This logic reached its peak in February 2023, when Louis Vuitton named Pharrell Williams as its new menswear creative director. Pharrell is a brilliant musician, producer, and cultural figure. He has spent decades shaping taste across music, streetwear, sneakers, and pop culture. And his Louis Vuitton debut was not some empty celebrity stunt. It was polished, emotional, expensive-looking, and full of pieces that people genuinely wanted to see and wear. But that is exactly what made it so revealing. Louis Vuitton was not only hiring a designer, it was hiring an audience, a network, and a cultural signal. When Pharrell staged his debut show on the Pont Neuf in Paris, the clothes mattered, but the event mattered just as much.
Everything was just perfect. It was perfect.
Beyoncé, Jay-Z, Rihanna, Zendaya, Kim Kardashian, and an entire universe of global celebrities turned the show into a cultural spectacle. The goal was not just to present a collection. The goal was to dominate the internet for 24 hours, and it worked perfectly. That does not mean Pharrell has no creative value. He clearly does. But his appointment showed how much the meaning of the job had changed. A creative director today is not only expected to design. They are expected to perform culture, attract celebrities, create content, generate headlines, and make the brand feel bigger than the clothes. Some will argue that this is progress. The old system, a small circle of European art school graduates deciding what good taste meant for the entire world, was its own kind of creative dictatorship. And there's truth in that. But the real question is not who holds the title. It is whether they are given actual creative power or whether they become the face of a machine that is still controlled somewhere else. This is not just happening at Louis Vuitton. Brands increasingly want interdisciplinary creatives, people who can design the store interior, cast the campaign, DJ the afterparty, and go viral on TikTok. The construction of the garment still matters, but it is now only one part of a much larger cultural performance. But what happens to the clothes when the boardroom has more influence than ever? You get what you could call the spreadsheet aesthetic. Luxury fashion is now deeply shaped by data. Brands analyze search trends, social media engagement, historical sales, regional demand, and consumer behavior to understand what people are likely to buy next. They know what colors are moving, what silhouettes are gaining traction, and what price points convert. Data may not literally design the clothes, but it increasingly defines the boundaries of what feels safe to design. If cherry red mini bags are trending, every brand suddenly finds a reason to make one. If chunky sneakers are selling, every house finds its own version. If quiet luxury becomes the mood of the moment, logos disappear overnight, and everything becomes beige, tailored, and expensive looking. The design process still starts with ideas, but those ideas now have to pass through a much narrower filter. Will it sell? Will it travel globally? Will it work on social media? Will it protect the brand's core business? Even when a designer succeeds within the system, the corporation can still treat them like a strategic tool. Demna turned Balenciaga into one of the most talked-about brands in fashion, and in 2025, Kering moved him to Gucci not just as a creative appointment, but as a turnaround tool. The machine absorbs even its own success stories. The result is a growing sameness across luxury. Over the last few years, so many major houses have introduced similar sneakers, similar bags, similar minimalist logos, similar campaigns, and similar store experiences. Walk through a luxury department store today, and it is often harder than it should be to tell the brands apart without looking at the label. This is what happens when data replaces intuition. Algorithms are designed to find the safest, most profitable path forward. They look at what already works and suggest doing more of it. But something completely new has no historical data to support it. By optimizing for what sells now, fashion risks losing the strange, irrational instinct that makes people care in the first place. They have reduced the risk, but they have also reduced the magic. This corporate optimization also has a human cost. The modern fashion system is a machine designed to burn people out. In the past, a designer might produce 2 collections a year, spring/summer and autumn/winter. Today, a creative director at a major house is expected to produce women's ready-to-wear, men's ready-to-wear, pre-fall, resort, sometimes haute couture, collaborations, capsule collections, campaigns, store concepts, celebrity dressing, and constant content. It is an impossible schedule, and it is breaking the people who actually care about the craft. We saw one of the clearest cracks in 2015 when Raf Simons left Christian Dior after just 3.5 years. Raf Simons is widely considered one of the greatest designers of his generation, but he walked away because the pressure was unsustainable. Critic Kathy Horan reported that Raf was frustrated by the lack of time to create. He was running his own label and Dior at the same time, and the machine simply moved too fast. That same year, Albert Elbaz was fired from Lanvin after 14 years. His exit came after a public rupture with owner Xiaolan Wang over creative control, weak management, and the future of the house. Either way, a designer who had rebuilt Lanvin with warmth, emotion, and a deep understanding of women was suddenly gone. More recently, in December 2024, John Galliano announced he was leaving Maison Margiela after a decade. His departure was framed as the end of a contract, but it felt symbolic. Galliano was one of the last true world builders left in the industry. His artisanal shows for Margiela were theatrical, meticulous, and deeply emotional. But in a landscape dominated by viral moments and celebrity ambassadors, that kind of slow, obsessive artistry feels harder and harder to protect. The system does not only ask designers to create, it asks them to create constantly. And when there is no time left to think, experiment, fail, or obsess over the work, fashion starts to lose the very thing that made it feel alive. The irony is that this entire corporate takeover is not even working the way it was supposed to. The conglomerates reduced creative risk in the name of predictable, endless growth. But by 2024 and 2025, that growth hit a wall. Consumers, especially the aspirational buyers luxury brands rely on, started to question the value proposition. Prices kept rising. Products became more expensive. But too often the emotional value did not rise with them. People were being asked to pay thousands for bags, shoes, and clothes that felt increasingly safe, familiar, and overmarketed. The market slowed down. Burberry, under Daniel Lee, saw revenues drop and profits come under serious pressure against a broader luxury slowdown. The musical chairs of 2025, with 15 new designers debuting in a single season, did not feel like a healthy industry calmly entering a new era. It felt like an industry desperately searching for a new formula. As luxury analyst Achim Berg noted, the industry is now confronting its own mistakes, from overpricing to overexpansion. The brands painted themselves into a corner. They optimized for the short term, and in the process, they weakened the long-term desire that makes luxury valuable in the first place. Because fashion is still an emotional purchase. Nobody needs a luxury handbag. They buy it because it makes them feel something. They buy it because it represents a dream, an aspiration, a connection to a world that feels more beautiful, powerful, or exciting than their own. And you cannot spreadsheet your way into an emotion. So, where does fashion go from here? The era of the dictatorial, untouchable creative director may be over. The financial stakes are too high for conglomerates to hand total control to an unpredictable artist. The boardrooms will continue to demand results. The data will continue to shape decisions. The machine is too big to simply disappear. But the current model is also showing cracks. Consumers are bored. The endless cycle of hype, drops, celebrity casting, and safe products has exhausted the very audience it was designed to attract. The brands that survive the next decade will be the ones that figure out how to balance the spreadsheet with the soul. They will have to understand that while data can tell you what sold yesterday, only real creative instinct can show you what people will want tomorrow. Until then, we are left with an industry full of famous names, massive marketing budgets, and very little to actually say. The title of creative director still exists. The shows still happen. The campaigns still launch. The celebrities still arrive in the front row. But the real question is whether the creative director still has the power to shape fashion, or whether they have become another part of the machine they were once supposed to challenge. Because if fashion removes the risk, the obsession, and the strange human instinct behind great design, what is left? A product? A campaign? A viral moment? Or just another expensive thing nobody really needs? What do you think? Is the creative director truly dead, or can fashion still make room for real vision? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.